and welcome back to yet another exciting week of the Lazy Money Game. In this week's episode, I will show how I have Buffett-like returns so far this year. And afterwards, I will take the opportunity to use my portfolio to show how I am reporting to the Danish tax authorities when you are using a foreign broker, much like I did last year. So let's immediately jump to a portfolio update. The first thing we notice is that there was a green circle for this week's episode, meaning that the portfolio is up in value. And the next thing we notice is that the cost has increased. So if we go to the portfolio values tab, we can see that the portfolio has increased with $9,400, and at the same time that the cost has increased with a little more than $5,000. If we then look at how the portfolio has performed within this year compared to the S&P 500, then we need to do a little calculation here. So the first thing I have calculated is how much has the portfolio gained within this year. So how I do that is I say the value of the portfolio minus the cost when the year started, and then I do the same for today. I say the value of the portfolio minus the cost. So now I can see how much value the portfolio has gained. Then I take the value I have gained today minus the value at the beginning of the year. So the total gain this year has been a little more than $8,700. Then I calculate this as a percentage gain. So I take this number, 8,700, and divide by the $191,000, meaning that the portfolio has had a gain of 4.5% this year so far. In order to compare this with the S&P 500, I do a quick Google search of the S&P 500. I go in the year-to-date graph, and you can see that the S&P 500 is down close to 7%. So all of a sudden, the positive returns of 4.5% in my portfolio really stands out as well, since currently I'm beating the S&P 500 by more than 11%. And in a historical context, if you're capable of beating the S&P 500 by more than 10%, then you're talking about Buffett-like returns. Of course, you really need to be aware of the period of time that we are looking at here is just a little more than 3 months. So this does not say too much. But needless to say, I'm really pleased with the result for the year so far. A good question to ask is, do I expect to continue to have this performance compared to the S&P 500? And the honest answer is, I simply do not know. And I would be highly surprised if I can continue to have this outperformance compared to the market. I mean, I have a goal of achieving more than the market is returning over a period of at least 5 years. But I mean, beating it by 10% or more, that is way too ambitious for me. I will be happy if I just beat it by 2%. If I beat it by 2%, then I would say my time is well spent. And if I can't beat the S&P 500 over a period of 5 years, well, then I should consider doing what I have advised 99% of all retail investors to do, simply just stick to index fund investing. So for now, I will stick to my strategy and pick individual stocks. And speaking of individual stocks, let's take a closer look at what I have actually been purchasing within this week. So if we scroll all the way to the top here, then you can see that the amount of dollars that I have invested into Activision Blizzard has increased by a little more than $5,000. So I have purchased 64 shares more in Activision Blizzard within this week. So let me once again explain why it is that I'm buying more of Activision Blizzard. Currently, there is a purchase offer out from Microsoft where they will buy every single share in Activision Blizzard, and they will pay $95 per share if they are allowed to do so by the authorities. So I'm relying on two things that needs to happen here. That Microsoft is allowed to buy, and that they have the cash to buy when they do so. Microsoft has announced that they will do this purchase sometime during 2023. So this week when I was able to scoop up my 64 shares of a little less than $79 per share, well, that will give me an annualized rate of return between 9.5% and a little more than 20%. So in a historical context, this would be a market-beating return on average. So that is why I'm still happy to buy more of this, especially when you look to all the volatility that we are seeing in the market. Here I feel that I get good value for my money, and that's all about when it comes to investing. So you might ask, why is it Activision Blizzard that I'm buying instead of buying, for instance, more of Beatrice, which is currently down more than 23% since I have initially bought it? Well, currently I like the risk versus the reward that I get by purchasing shares in Activision Blizzard, since I feel really convinced that Microsoft will do this purchase, and with the returns that I'm looking to get by buying these shares, then I prefer to have a lower return but with a higher certainty, but the return actually still fits the return criteria that I have for my portfolio, namely that it will be a market beating return to get this. So that is why I am willing to pour more money in here, and so far they are making up a little more than 12.5% of my portfolio. I have no problem with having a holding that takes up even more than that. So how much am I willing to let Activision Blizzard weigh in my portfolio? Well, I don't have any problem letting it go all the way up to 20%. 20% is usually where a lot of professional money managers would say that is the absolute maximum that you are allowed to have in one single stock. And if you're looking to Berkshire Hathaway, for instance, currently they have more than 47% of their value in one company, namely Apple. And if you listen to Charlie Munger, then he would say, if you're diversifying, then you're simply just hedging against your own idiocy, meaning if you're buying something, then make sure that you know enough about this company that you're willing to bet a lot. If we then continue to my favorites tab, namely the dividends tab, then we can see that this has been quite a good week since I have received a little more than $140, and those came from Agreed Realty Corporation, Beatrice, and Organon. So when we are looking at the quarterly dividends here, we can see that Q1 is now starting to close in on Q4. But one thing that is very clear to see here is the growth at which my dividends were growing with throughout 2021 is not something that I can keep up with here in 2022, at least not so far. And there is a very natural explanation, and that is Activision Blizzard, since that is a company that have a very low dividend payout, and currently I am willing to let my dividend stagnate for a long period of time, since I view the investment in Activision Blizzard as a company with one very large special dividend payment when and if Microsoft will be allowed to buy them. So when we are looking at the dividends which I have received this year so far, well, when I did my comparison between my portfolio and the S&P 500, I was actually not factoring in the performance of the dividends. So if we want to adjust for that, then we have to go to the portfolio values tab, and then we have to adjust this number by the dividends which I have received this year. So if we do that, then we can see that the performance of the portfolio goes from 4.5% and up to 5.2%. So actually a little better than what I have initially shown. So let's continue to tax reporting. Since last year in episode 65, I tried to give you a detailed explanation for how to report tax if you're using a foreign broker and are living in Denmark. So this year I will show you the numbers which I'm inputting in these 4 different fields. So let's start with field 452. Here you need to input the amount of Danish kroner which you have received in dividends. And since I am investing in US stocks, I need to use the correct exchange rate all these exchange rates can be found on the Danish Central Bank's webpage, so you have to note those for each individual day where you have received a dividend. And what you do is you simply add all those numbers together. So in total last year, I received 65 dividends, and that gave me a total income of a little more than 10,000 Danish kroner. So this is what I have to note into field 452, and in field 496 I have to input the amount of withholding tax that I have already paid. So that is 15% off of that number, which is a little more than 1,500. And just to remove any sort of misunderstanding, the reason why this US dollar amount is much lower than what you're seeing in my Google Sheet is due to the fact that I have switched broker to Nordnet, and I only have to report the foreign holdings, meaning the holdings that I have on a foreign broker. And since Nordnet is reporting on my behalf, that is why this number is significantly lower than what you're seeing in the Google Sheet. If we then continue to field 454, here you have to input the profit and loss you have had from buying and selling shares. So in 2021 I did a lot of sales since I was trying to exit Revolut. So this time there is much more that I need to calculate. So if we start with Ford, for instance, I have to register the price which I have paid when I initially bought them, and I have added a minus here since that is money which I have paid. Then you can see the exchange rate, and when I then sold the shares, the exchange rate was much lower. And if you move all the way to the side, then you can see that I have had a gain of 840 kroner from selling those shares. So what I'm doing here is I have to add each individual stock, all the buys and sells. That is what I have listed here, all the way down. And if we then calculate the total profit here, that is the amount that I need to input into field 454. So what surprised me the most when I was doing this calculation was that I actually have a loss in international paper and AT&T. And this is purely based on the exchange rate difference, since I sold on a profit in US dollars, but due to the fact that the exchange rate has changed so much, I actually came out with a loss when I have to report to tax. And finally, in field 490, you have to input the value of your account at the end of the year, so meaning the 30th of December, and the exchange rate. So 27,472 US dollars with an exchange rate of 6.56 gives me a little more than 100,000 in Danish kroner, and that is what I have inputted into field 490. So that actually sums it up for yet another exciting week of the Lazy Money Game. I was truly amazed to share that I have had Buffett-like returns so far this year. Of course, I do not expect this to be the case at the end of the year. And at the same time, I'm happy to share how to report to the Danish tax authorities, at least if you're using a foreign broker. The reason why I didn't post this last weekend, I know that you could have looked at your tax reporting last weekend, but when I did that, my Q number was above 500,000, so I thought it was okay to at least wait for a week so you don't have to waste so much time to do this reporting. And until I see you next time, bye!